Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Buddy Study Group. And today we have probably, I would say you're the most prolific presenter in Buddy Study Group history, Rhonda Bills, good friend and partner of Buddy INS, maybe tied or close with Linda, who's also on the call. Um, but today we're going to talk about closing long-term care sales. And this can, be a sticking point for many. The long-term care sale is not an easy sale or everybody would be doing it, right? And I think Rhonda has year over year over year proven to be one of the best at getting folks to see the need for long-term care and then actually doing something about it. And there's something to be said for being able to do both really effectively. Yeah, just somebody who is a CLTC master trainer, again, top study group presenter. Rhonda, thank you so much for agreeing to be here today and sharing some of your knowledge. And I hope you don't mind if I pick your brain a little bit today.
Please do. And it's fun to see all these faces. So I saw several of you a few weeks ago at the ILTCi conference, Suzanne. So it's great to see you guys and good to be back here. So
Yeah, and let me also add, Rhonda is the very first specialist with Buddy INS. So she always going to hold that title. First believer in what we were doing here. So really appreciate you, Rhonda.
yes,
We'll
equally.
have we'll have to get you a collection of medals that you can put on a cork board of all your Buddy INS achievements. Um, so Rhonda, I wanted to start with a specific concept that you've mentioned on presentations before, and I hear you talk about a lot because it helps, I think, a lot of aspects of your sales approach and could help a lot of other people's sales approach. And that's figuring out their why for doing long-term care when you're speaking to a client. I know you've mentioned that that ties into not only the beginning and getting to learn about the client that you're in front of, but also even toward the end, maybe as things might slow down, people get quiet, things of that nature. So, would you be able to just talk to the group a little bit about finding somebody's why and why it's important to you, why it helps you?
Yeah, so I've shared this before. When I have my first appointment with people, I always start out and tell them just a little bit about myself so that they feel a little bit of comfort as who's this person that they've never met, or maybe it was referred to me. So tell them just a little bit about myself, but I really want to spend most time asking questions about them. And I will ask them right out of the gate, why is it you wanted to talk today about long-term care? What sparked your interest? And I'll follow it up with what is your biggest concern of an extended care event happening to your family? And then, and I'm guilty of this from time to time. Sometimes I like to talk a lot, and you just really have to shut up and listen. And I write that down on every appointment, what their why is. Why do they want to meet? And I'm going to use that and incorporate it throughout the presentation or the consultation, however you want to look at it. Because then when we start talking about how these products work, I'm going to reincorporate their why. If it was for an example, if it was a situation of like I had an appointment this morning with a gal who's dealing with her mom. She's in a skilled rehab facility and it's really expensive. And right now she's getting Medicare, but they're not sure that she's going to be able to keep getting physical therapy. Medicare is eventually going to cut her off and it's really expensive. And she just wants to make sure that that doesn't happen to her and be limited on choices of where she can receive care. So that was her why, what prompted her to look into long-term care planning. So I'm going to use that throughout the dialogue and remembering that was her key why. That's the why. And so when we start talking about building a policy and how do they work, it's a pool of money, it's going to send you a check, and I'm going to turn around and use that. So when the day comes, when your doctor certifies you do need care, now your daughter has a plan to go to. They can make the phone calls and set up that plan of care, and they do not have to do all the things that you're doing. So I keep not only remembering what their why was, but talking to them and incorporating it in the conversation as to how this plan is going to mitigate the risk and concern of what they do not want to happen.
Yeah, yeah, and you mentioned this as an effective way to get people back in the game, get their head back in the game. Now, every client may have something pop up in their life that they need to address, and the appointment with us can't always come first, right? But if you get the sense that somebody has a real need and is getting cold feet, I really like the language that you've used in the past when you've mentioned, remember this why that we talked about for doing long-term care? We haven't solved that yet. I think that's a really important piece of things. But is there anything else that you employ beyond that when people kind of go quiet or dark on you? I know most of that's not in our control, right?
Yeah, I
But
mean, and there is, you're right on there, Jason, because there's many different variables that happens too. So now I'm thinking of a different scenario. Had a gentleman inquire, he's in his 70s. I knew he wasn't going to qualify for traditional product. I looked into One America. We applied. He actually was declined One America last year. Of course, he had his immediate hissy fit. He was mad, upset, hurt. You rejected all those emotional feelings that happen. And so I just let him have his cool off. I let him kind of blow up at me. I have big shoulders, had two older brothers. Come on, bring it on. I can take it all. And just kind of let him calm down about it. And then after about 6 months, I just started drip emailing him again, touching base. Hey, how are you doing? And so now I'm dripping with, hey, we got a new product out here, one that we don't have to go through and answer all those medical questions. And we can still get tax free and we can still use your lump sum. And so now he was sold on it. We're talking about bridge. I'm talking about referencing the bridge equitable product. So he relatively, we had 3 conversations about it, sending the brochures. He's very analytical. He grew up with his dad was a reporter in DC on what was going on monetarily in the budgets. And so he grew up with all these conversations. So he's very detailed. And it was the third appointment. He's like, okay, let's schedule the interview to do the health assessment. So he did the health assessment, got the preferred rating right out of the gate. So he's really happy. Now it's down to the money. Okay. What the situation is he's got a trust from his father, him and his brother, but his brother's the trustee. So he's waiting for the brother to give final approval to take the money out to do it. So this is another one of those where you just kind of got to be patient. You got to kind of wait, but you got to keep putting back at him. So actually this morning I had emailed him and said, hey, how's it going? Haven't heard from you a while. I just, I've been gone. I didn't want you to think I forgot. You just make whatever reason that you just wanted to touch base with them. And he's like, Rhonda, I just emailed my brother yesterday and said, hey, have you looked this over yet? And he's promised me he's going to get to it here in the next couple of weeks. I've also reached out to my accountant to see what the tax implications. He can't get to it till April 15th. And I do know I have till the 3rd week of April to get my application in because with Equitable, you've got that 90 days once you do that health assessment. So it was like good timing.
right.
Being a little off topic, but I have a rule that if I probably the last 3 or 4 years, if I think of somebody, if they cross my mind, I try to reach out because you never know. Well, how true is it in sales? And I know like Diane Stoddard on our team can, attest to the same thing. Sometimes if you just reach out to them like, oh, I was just thinking about you. So here's a clear example of that. And so why we are patient. We just kind of keep dripping because you don't know when the right moment will be.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. And actually, right when you hopped on the call, we were talking about how you just wanted to send an email out quick before we said anything, and it was down to like one touching something, right? So when it crosses your mind, you never know if it's going to be a good time or not, but you'll absolutely never know if you don't try. So I think that's a good way to kind of think of things. If somebody crossed your mind, even if you have like a note in your system or whatever, it may be a good time to reach out.
Mhm.
Um, so I honestly hope that every question I ask you leads to a good case study that you can think about. That would be super awesome. But I think what you said makes sense about kind of balancing being patient, acknowledging that people have lives outside of talking to you, but also you kind of can't let it slip away a bit. Now, I'm wondering when you're in a meeting, um, how are you normally asking for the sale? Because we don't really talk about that much as a concept on this study group or just I don't see agents intermingling about how do you actually ask for the sale. So I'm wondering how you actually go about it.
Yeah, so on the first meeting, I like to set up kind of a precedence of how this thing's because it's the first time it's a brand new relationship between me, a brand new lead, a prospect, and me, and so it's kind of a honeymoon phase, right? We're
Yeah.
learning how each other's work and what are our expectations here. So I like to tell them, hey, this is what we're going to do today. I'm going to ask you some questions. This is all about you. You wanted to learn about long-term care, so you get to ask me these questions. And then I said, we'll go through it. I'll do my homework for you. I'm going to do the underwriting. I never take anything for, assume you're going to get approved. So I always like to double check all my homework for you. I'll prepare those run rates and quotes. Then next time we meet, we're going to look at it together. And, we're probably not going to make a decision that day. We're probably going to take some things off the drawing board, and you're probably going to ask me to put some new things on the drawing board. And we're going to go through that and keep working through that until we find a plan that works for you. And then once you feel comfortable that as long as it works realistically affordable in your budget without changing your lifestyle, then we'll start that application. And now we're going to see if the company wants you.
So
And
you're
so,
setting it up from the very beginning in your expectation setting with people that, hey, we're gonna go ahead with this if it's a fit, if it's a fit for your budget and everything looks good.
and usually you'll know during the process because when they're asking a lot of questions, they're engaged and they're curious. How does this work? Well, how does it work? Do I get my death benefit back? Or how does that shared care thing work? Or can I pay it up? Can I use my cash value life insurance? I mean, you will know when they're actively asking you questions, they're engaged in that conversation. But when their questions start becoming fewer and far between, you know that you've either A, answered a lot of their questions or the roadblocks, their immediate roadblocks have been put down. So now you can start saying, okay, this is where we're at. I just sometimes like to ask them, hey, we've talked about a lot of these different ones. Which one are you leaning towards? Are you, and usually to kind of fast speed that, I will usually just say, hey, what are you thinking about the death benefit? How important is that to you? Are
Yeah.
you liking that third shared pool with NGL, or, rates are hard to beat in California with Thrivent? Are you like, tell me, does that offend you, signing the Christian, form or whatever. So usually I'll just try to help narrow it down for me. So that way, if I kind of know what they're liking or not liking, that way it helps me to keep zooming in and then remembering their why and putting that why, how that's going to fit into what they want.
Yeah, I love that. I love the way you kind of approach that because I think one of the big mistakes that folks can make is they kind of get in this mode of like, as long as I keep talking and providing good information, then I don't have to stop and think about whether or not they're going to buy this thing, right? As long as I kind of keep this conversation going, it's a good thing. And, we've heard from others. We had Steve Elliott on the study group last year, and he talked about there is a point where you can actually lose folks. So I really like the fact that you're checking in on specific things that really helps you kind of narrow things down, but it also helps you gauge their level of interest.
Yeah. And I think Steve is right. And I think that's probably the crux, the negative part about who I am. I'm not one of those people that just went out and sold, sold, sold. I tend to be more educational and informative and let's work together to find a solution. But I do think if it does start to get quiet, then you need to go back and ask them, say, hey, you know what? We still have not solved your why. We
Yeah.
haven't come to a solution. The fact remains you still have this unprotected liability, this risk that's really uncomfortable to you, that's a family effect. We want to still need to take care of that. Now, if you've resolved it, please let me know. And I will, I always tell people, I want to provide a value added service. I don't want to provide a negative one. So tell me how I can do a value added service for you.
Yeah. And, Steve's approach won't work for everyone. Your approach won't work for everyone. But I think something, there's some truth in what you are both saying, in that there is a point where people will stop contributing to the conversation because in their mind they kind of want to get out of it, right? You can lose somebody, and for you it's more putting your ear to the ground, checking in, understanding what they're going through, or trying to get an understanding of what they're going through so that you can actually finish this conversation one way or another, right? I think that's really, really important. And I think as far as that piece goes, you can win a case, you can lose a case at a very specific point in time. You can gain trust and you can lose trust at a very specific point in time. Do you notice any times because you're amazing rock star Rhonda, but everybody loses a case once in a while. Is there specific times where you've kind of noticed, hey, this is where I feel like I've won the case, or this is where I feel like I've lost the case, and any general trends there?
Well, I'm hoping that everybody else is going to echo my sentiments here. When you asked me that, the first thing that popped in my head is financial planners. Financial planners, they're the ones that seem to put the kibosh on things. So I remember vividly, I had a case last year where we were doing a traditional product and they loved the shared care. They didn't have kids. She was in the nursing medical field. She wanted a plan in place. And we put them in. And while she was applying, she's like, I sent her the brochure and she's like, hey, Rhonda, can I do a 10-year paid up? And I said, yeah, you sure can. And so, well, what would that premium be? So I gave that to her. And then she's like, can I do a single premium? I said, yes, you can. So I went ahead and gave her that. And then she got approved. And I said, do you want me to have them issue it pay as you go or the 10-year paid up? And she goes, let me get back to you tomorrow. I think I want to do the single premium. And I was like, oh, okay. So the next day she says, yeah, we're going to do the single premium. Can you give me 2 days? I got to get the money transferred over. And I'm like, oh, brother, here we go.
Here it goes.
But I cannot believe, I mean, I do believe it because it happens, but she went to a financial planner and he basically told her, no, you don't want to do that. He didn't want her taking that single lump sum money out. And when she told me she was going to her planner to get the money, I already prepared her. I said, and I was telling her about, some other big financial planners will tell you this is the reason why. I said, some financial planners really don't like you moving big lump sums of money out of their account. So I said, tell your accountant, tell your guy if they feel like we want to go back to the 10-year premium, we could do that. If they want to fund the pay as you go, we can do that. So I don't want him to think that I'm the one that's slamming this single premium down their throat. And she goes, well, of course, no, by all means. And I saved this email and I bring it back to her. She said, oh, no, of course, we're going to work with you. We like working with you. And I saved that. But in the end, the financial planner said, no, I'm going to look into some other stuff for you. And then he convoluted the whole thing and she ended up doing nothing.
Mm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I lost the case. But in the end, what's sad is she still has her why unsolved. So I still keep in touch with her from time to time. And I still send her the response, that save email that said, we're going to keep working with you. I always keep that email back and let her know, we still don't have your why solved. So.
Yeah. And I appreciate you sharing that with me. And I just want to encourage anybody who's on the call right now. I don't need to hog Rhonda for as long as she's here. So if you have any questions for Rhonda or yeah, just anything you'd like to pick her brain about, she's a wealth of knowledge. Otherwise, I mean, I'll keep her all to myself, but happy to have anybody else ask whatever you want of Rhonda for her to be able to impart. Yeah, go ahead, Suzanne.
Thanks. Hi, Rhonda. So nice to see you.
Yeah, you too.
So do you have a certain process as far as the time frame between, let's say you have a first meeting? I mean, it's ideal to set up the next meeting before you leave the first one, but if you've got someone who's like, oh, I want to talk to my advisor, or they kind of balk at setting up another meeting, do you sort of have a rule of thumb for how frequently you'll do check-ins?
I like to do mine a week apart. Now it doesn't always work out that way, but if I met like my first appointment today with somebody, I'm like, hey, can we meet? You want to meet next week, same time, same place? Because that usually works out, but it just kind of depends on their schedule. I usually do not get the pushback from the financial planner until they're ready to pull the trigger. So here's another thing as far as when leads get cold or maybe you're slow because I'd like to think maybe it's not just Rhonda that's been slow last 3 months here, but what was I going with this train of thought?
As like if it's stale, if it's been a little while, as far as when to follow up.
Yeah, so whatever the reason is. Oh, I know I was going to. So usually when people are looking into it, they want to look into information, right? They want to look into it. And typically They're not going to just go to one person. They're going to go to many different resources because I would tell you in general, people don't want to be they don't want to be sold. They don't want to be, they don't want somebody selling them, right? They
Right.
want to be educated. They want to make an informative decision based on their needs. So the last thing I want to do is come across really salesy. So we have to keep involving their why, listening to them, what's their situation, and how we can have a plan that can mitigate and get rid of those risks and the things that are uncomfortable to them. So what if we have a stack of leads that we've met with them before and we've not moved forward on it, and remember, they didn't want to be sold, they want information. So find reasons why you want to retouch back to them. You don't want to just keep dripping on them. Hey, we need to schedule a next appointment. Hey, we need to schedule. I see we haven't scheduled. We want to find new reasons why, because they're coming to us, we have information, and they feel like they want to get that information from us, but they don't want to be sold. But they want to be in the know. So what is it that we know? So I'm always trying to figure out, you got to keep yourself valuable, keep ourselves humble, and keep ourselves valuable on our toes. What is it that we know we need to share with them? So there's a lot of different things that go on, and I'm sure a lot of you know these. Number one, birth dates. Rates can change at birth dates, or if you're doing, some of the carriers are 6 months before a birth date. We want to keep in mind that's a reason to reach out to them, out to them. Hey, we still haven't solved our situation. Maybe it was a postponement for a medical. I've been doing a lot of follow-ups, and believe it or not, one gal last week said, Rhonda, I really appreciate you keep following up with me. I had my left hip replaced. Now I'm having the right one done. It should be resolved in November, whatever. So again, sometimes just keep in touch with them to keep me on the forefront of their medical. And some of these people really appreciated that you're actually remembering them. So it could be a birthday, it could be a follow-up on a medical procedure. I had another one. I followed up with medical. We had to wait a period of time. I followed up with him. He's like, I don't know, Ron, if I'm ever going to be able to get this. So now at this point, I'm like, okay, we're going to jump ship. We're going to forget traditional. We're going to forget hybrid. Let's just get short-term care because we know we can qualify for that. In the event your health does improve later, then we'll replace it or we'll move on. But at this point now, I'm starting to say, okay, let's meet, let's do something different. So it could be a birthday, could be a health, medical, pre-qualification reason why that you're following up with them. Could be product changes, right? I remember back in the 90s when I started out, GE, John Hancock, we're going to roll out our new product. They're going to hit the compact state. You got 3 months to get those apps in, we're like, cool. Well, now what do we get? 2 weeks, maybe 1 week notice. Boom.
Yeah,
So if
if
we
that.
know there's new products that are going to be coming out, changing, that gives us our own little fire sale that we can go to those prospects, tell them, hey, I got inside information, new products coming out, something's going away, prices are going up, health underwriting change. Maybe it's, hey, they're going to come out with new health underwriting guidelines. We need to make changes, or maybe nationwide release some of their underwriting guidelines. So now maybe I can go back and talk to them. Or maybe we just got new products, like now we've got equitable, tax-free annuity, fixed annuity with long-term care rider. We've got different information because we're in the know. We're in the industry, we know we've got stuff. So we're just you want to find whatever point you can use to give reasons to reach out to those people, to keep that open line of communication going. And then there's obviously the economy, right? That's the one I'm thinking going on today. So, we know this. I just talked, the gentleman that I was telling you about, that the brother's the trustee of the trust that's going to release the money. He's like, I'm looking at my portfolio. My portfolio is down 30% or whatever. And he's in his 70s. He's not happy. This product is more attractive. He's sitting there waiting on his brother, So sometimes it's not out of our control, but they appreciate us for keep following up with them. And if they tell you, you know what, Rhonda, we got it resolved, fine. Then I'm going to put down that rock. I'm going to put down that lead. I'm going to move it to a different pile. I want to spend my time with families that need Rhonda or need my services. But thank you. You helped me. So I'll quit following up with you. Quit wasting my time.
Yeah, Diane just wanted to make sure that you meant Equitrust.
Yeah, what did
I
I
think
say?
I think
Equitable?
you had said Equitable.
Equitrust. Thank you, Diane.
She's
Rich.
got your back.
Thank
And you know what? Speaking of Diane, I think you two have a lot of commonalities over a phrase I heard long ago, and I just always keep thinking about is in order to be interesting to someone, you need to be interested. And I think a lot of the outreach that you guys do to reinvigorate people who do, get quiet on you is very thoughtful and based on interest in them, be it their birthday, be it something that they told you that you've taken a note on and that you're checking in on. I think all of that, um, makes you appear less like somebody who is just salivating to, are you going to buy something?
Right.
Are you ready to buy yet? Like nobody looks forward to getting back to that agent, but people look forward to getting back to the agent that says, "Hey, I know your daughter was graduating high school. How was it? Did everything, go as you expected?" And remembering a little nuance from the conversation that can really help.
Well, I have a whole bunch, but I
Um,
I love, I call Mark the marketing genius because he's created all this automation and it makes my life so much easier. So when people are already scheduling appointments and I haven't even got to my first email because Mark's doing his magic there. As much as I love that, I still will say there is a room, there's a space for that personal emotional connection that people are still wanting, which is, hey, personally, hey, how did your surgery go? Or hey, did you have your latest A1C check? Or hey, you got the kids out of college, are you ready to move forward now? Or whatever the situation is. So I do think it's a balance of both.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I think I've seen you give presentations on different long-term care resources that are out there. And I think being plugged into those, being plugged into every carrier newsletter, being plugged into whatever, publications of friends you have, or just the bigger industry publications or finance publications, whatever it may be, gives you that sort of fuel to use to reach out to folks who you read one article or another, or you read one carrier update or another, and you think about a specific person. That generates those thoughts where you're like, oh, maybe now's the right time to reach out to this person because I have a message that won't just pester them, right? Anybody else have questions for Rhonda before I
I have
continue
a
to ask
question.
her a few more?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, Rhonda.
Hey, Carly.
Um, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about short-term plans and how you,
We lost her. Hopefully she comes back to us.
So I'm not sure if you can hear me, Carly, but I heard the beginning of short-term care. So I'll just kind of start talking about that. Here's an example of one of my group cases this morning that I was working with an individual employee, and she wanted to look at long-term care for her and her husband. It's his second marriage, her first marriage, and he had kids prior to his with his first marriage, but they don't have kids. So obviously, long-term care is very important for both of them, right? Well, he's a little bit short for his weight, and he has some A1C. He's got some muscular back, muscular skeletal issues with his back. So, that's going to be a good case for I'm going to present a traditional because they didn't need life insurance so much, but traditional with Mutual of Omaha versus say an NGL. And then she wanted to compare pay as you go versus a 10-year payment. And I told her, as much as you're not interested in the life insurance, if we look at the 10-year payment, we really need to look at a hybrid. So I ran a nationwide versus a Securian on those 10 pays. And then with Mutual of Omaha, I put the spousal security rider, and then I said, let's run one just for him with, say, a short-term care product. And my latest go-to for the longest time it was Aetna, but I really like that Manhattan Life Omniflex because it's got inflation in it. So that's an example of where I'll probably end up doing a short-term care for him, and maybe a traditional with a pay-as-you-go or 10 pay, or depending on what she decides for her. But we have not had our second meeting. So I don't know, Carly, I didn't
I
get all
think
your.
we like fully lost her. Unfortunately, I think her internet decided to cut her off before she finished. Lori says in the chat, I find one way to sometimes get a response is in addition to asking a laggard prospect, ready to continue our discussion, have something interesting to add to the email. Yeah, exactly. Info about the new Caregiver movie on PBS coming out soon. Yeah, I mean, anything that's kind of tangential to what you're talking about, or even just something that I saw this and it made me think of you. Like, I don't think there's too much, I don't think there's too much that you would find to be inappropriate, to reach out to somebody and say, "Hey, I saw this article and it made me think about you," like, and you could leave it at that, right? At the end of the day. And that's at least something that is contributing to you being at the top of their mind, the important discussion you had being at the top of mind for them. Any little engagement. I mean, we say this on the group side, matters just as much on the individual side. Any little touch or piece of engagement pushes somebody a little bit farther down the line to making their decision.
And you never know when it's going to be. So, like we work a lot with a lot of people follow Dave Ramsey or maybe they follow Susie Orman. How many times have they listened to both Dave Ramsey and Susie Orman over and over? But I had an appointment yesterday and I asked them what their why was. Well, the wife's mom was in a facility for 5 years and the husband's mom was living with them. They both retired. Corporate America retired them early. And but they're basically going back and forth. The mother-in-law is living with them and they don't want this. They want to plan ahead and have this plan in place. But for whatever reason, the latest blog post or article or whatever, it really spoke to them. How many other times have they heard some of these other planners talk to them? But you never know what time is going to be the right time that's really going to strike a nerve.
Yeah, agreed. Um, I want to go back to a part of a discussion that we had earlier. And you said when you can tell somebody is interested, there's they're asking a lot of questions that are either personal to their situation or indicative of some sort of preference that they have for what you're going through. And I'm just wondering if there is so I know you mentioned you set it up in the beginning saying, hey, you're probably going to ask me a lot of questions, but are there any other tools or methods that you use to really generate questions outside of asking, hey, do you have any questions?
Um, I like to ask a lot of questions up front. Because that's going to help me in my first appointment. Tell me about your family experience. I'm asking, is the mother-in-law living there because dad passed away and she's lonely? Are you actually physically helping her? Do you drive her back and forth to appointments? Because a lot of times when you ask them, hey, do you have any family experience? They're going to say no. But then when you actually dig into it and say, what things were you doing? I know, when my dad was still living at home, was I his 24-hour caregiver? No, but I was still going over there. I'm still doing this and that. And then when he's in the hospital, I'm still going in, doing this, getting his mail and doing things like that. So, I mean, there's always something, but sometimes people don't think of it. Kind of like somebody was saying earlier, oh, I bought that policy for when I get old, even though I know it was one of my current clients. Here's a heartwarm. I'm getting off track. Here's a heartwarm. One of my multi-life cases that I sold 20 years ago, the wife calls me today and says, I did not know this because most people, they call their agent, but she didn't call me. They didn't call me. The husband had a stroke 4 years ago. They've been using MetLife for his home health care for this time. And she said their son said, why don't I move home and help take care of dad because mom can't physically lift. So they have home care coming in, but they basically get him up as needed when you have to, right? Because mom says, I can get him out of the car easier, but I can't get him in the car or vice versa, one or the other. So the son's going to move home. And so she was asking me, will the policy pay for my son to take care of him? Or he's in the reserve military, so he's got to go one weekend a month. Can we pay for respite care? So it was really it was good for me to know that MetLife is paying those claims and because I was not privy that he needed it. And she's like, oh yes, like last year we got $82,000 from MetLife to cover home care services. And she's like, we're down to about 100,000 left. So now if the son comes in, helps out, but yet it'll still cover respite for when he's not there. So, it was a wonderful reaffirmation for me having those dialogues when you've got clients that are using their policies. It keeps our why we're spending our day walking and talking about an unprotected liability that's going to affect their family. So
And I think it reaffirms your specific approach as Rhonda, because you, more than most that I know, are asking very detailed questions about family situation, all to get to a point of, listen, whether we get to an insurance plan or not, I want to make sure your family has a plan, verbal, written, or otherwise. I think that's an important piece to what you do that really helps people not only right away to understand how they want this whole thing to play out, but in the moment when there is a claim, hey, we actually talked about this with Rhonda and we have a break glass in case of emergency operating procedure, right? Because Rhonda took the time to understand exactly how my family unit kind of breathed and worked together, right? I think probably coming from your CLTC master trainer side, where you're helping to educate the next generation of long-term care specialists or long-term care minded financial professionals, I think that's one of the things you bring to the table that everybody who's getting started needs to hear. Is there anything else that is sort of like that as you're actually training this next generation? What do you always want to make sure you impart on them?
I think my biggest thing that I want is, there's a saying, the best way to avoid disaster is to prepare for one. um that somebody else was telling me, when in the economic world they say those that, oh, how did they say, those that fret the most fret the best, or something like that. So if if you're really afraid of unwanted consequences, you're going to be best at it because you're preparing for them. And
Right.
that's really what we want to do. That's the whole purpose why CLTC was designed. Why are we not having proactive conversations? All of us are in that business to have proactive conversations, tough conversations, emotional conversations, whether you come from the life insurance world or, hey, not planning enough for financial planning to make sure you can retire, disability, whatever world you were in and trying to maybe add long-term care, or maybe you're just starting out. We are charged with having tough conversations. And, I hope you all have a layer of Teflon shield on you, because we're going to get a lot of stuff thrown at us, and we got to make sure that we can give it back, but do it, in a thoughtful way.
Yeah. And if you have that why, like you were talking about, like we try to get from the client, like we have why we're sitting here right now having these conversations in the first place. That's kind of your layer of Teflon skin, right? As Suzanne put it, it's courageous conversations.
Great. Yeah,
If you really believe in what you're doing, it's going to provide you some courage when you're trying to initiate a very, difficult conversation with someone and you may get rejected, right? There are other people out there who need my help, right? But this person in front of me still needs my help, even though their initial reaction was, rejection of sorts, right? Many people don't stop there because they have the courage, but they know how to keep that conversation going and kind of do it the right way, right? We just had Carly back in, and Carly, I don't know if your internet is going to cooperate with us this time, but now's the opportunity to ask Rhonda your question. Your timing's perfect if you'd like.
Oh, okay. Thought I was gonna have to watch the recording. So I'm just curious, between long-term care and short-term care, like if there's a way that you transition people without, so that it sounds like something palatable instead of like, well, this is the last best case scenario. Like, how would you transition people?
So again, on my first appointment, I usually like to tell them, prepare them what we're going to do. So I'll ask them some questions. I also want to know, what their knowledge is how much experience, are they medical background? Do they already know what ADLs are? So it helps me to know that I can kind of go with their tempo. But I'm going to go through that and talk about, okay, now let's talk about all your options out there. And then we'll start out talking about traditional long-term care option 1. And then I'll go through the bullet points with that. And then I'll talk about hybrid long-term care and go through the bullet points. And then I'll say, and then we got option 3, we call it short-term care. And I said, it works very similar to option 1. It's just for a short duration. It's got 1 year home care, 1 year facility care. And I'll tell them, I said, why do we have something crazy like that? Because some people have medical issues. They do not qualify to apply for option 1 or 2. So I'm kind of setting the stage up as well, so they know what to expect. And happens a lot as I start digging into the medical questions. I'll say, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm still going to give you my college girl try. I'm going to go back to the underwriting guidebooks. I'm going to have to email underwriters. I may come back to you and email you and ask you a few more questions. But I said, this may be a situation where one of us may need to go with option 3. I know we both want to be on the same option, and we want to share a plan or whatever their situation is. But I said, I'm going to do my homework and I'm going to tell you all the options. And I let them know I'm a broker. I work with all the companies. So you don't have to go down the road and spend all your time going through all this conversation again. And then obviously the next appointment, I'll say, okay, here's what I got.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I think that can help cut down on some of the negative emotion of knowing that your first or second choice actually isn't available to you. Setting expectations really helps kind of curtail the severity of the reaction, right? Because if somebody's maybe not expecting to be denied or told not to apply, that's when it gets worse. But I think setting the expectations in the first place really helps avoid some of those hurt feelings. But people are still going to have their feelings hurt at the end of the day when they're told they can't have something or this company doesn't want you, right? How do you best help people to get over that?
So here's an example. I had an appointment today with this. This was a daughter that was inquiring for mom and dad. Well, all right. Does everybody want to roll their eyes and go, well, we know how this one's going to go. So I said, well, you're looking for mom and dad. She goes, well, my mom says she doesn't want any part of it. So it's for my dad. And I said, well, how is dad's health? And so I just cut to the chase. Yep, dad had a stroke. He's in a facility. He's getting rehab. Not sure if he's going to be able to come home. If he does, not sure if they can afford it, blah, blah, blah. So, I asked some more questions because I didn't want to feel like I wasn't going to give them any of my time a day. So I wanted to be respectful. So I asked a few more questions. Is he getting physical therapy? Does he have any residual effects? So I said, unfortunately, your dad's not going to be eligible for insurance likely. And of course you want private insurance because there's a really good chance that Medicare is going to stop paying for his therapy here in about 20 days. So yes, likely you do want long-term care. I admire you for doing that. You're doing the right thing as a daughter. Unfortunately, dad had a stroke. That's going to prevent him. Dad's already in the facility. That's going to prevent him from getting coverage, and he's got residual effects. I said, there are some plans out there that are designed to help people that can't answer those yes, no medical questions, but it requires a lump sum of money. Any chance that your parents have an extra $100,000 that's not sitting in a 401k? And she was like, no. So the conversation I spent a lot of my time with her is, as a daughter, I said, do they own their home? Do they rent? No, they have a home. Do you have cars? So I basically walked her through what Medicare is going to do and how that's going to work. I walked her through what to prepare for Medicaid and how that's going to work. What is mom going to have? And then she did tell me that dad was still working part-time and they did not take Part B because he had employer coverage. I said, is mom on the coverage with dad's employer? She said, yes. I said, here's what you need to do. You need to double check with the doctor what they're thinking, the prognosis, how long they're going to keep him there. And then you need to start talking to HR at the work because most employers will terminate you if you do not return to work within 6 months. And when they terminate you, that's when you lose your health insurance. So the question is, at what point is his employer going to shut him off the insurance? They need to know that information because they need to know when they got to start working with Medicare.gov to get Part B signed up, to get the supplement, to get the prescription, not only for dad, but for mom too. So I kind of gave her two marching orders to start with. I gave her some resources. I know, we know an elder law attorney in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania. This couple is in Pennsylvania. If you need an outlook, and I said, if you need home care services, we can hook them up with a modest senior care. So just trying to be somebody, one, to help this daughter through this. She's got so many things coming at her at once and she's trying to help mom. And I said, honestly, does mom and dad have much assets outside of $100,000? And she's, not too much. I said, realistically, I don't really see the point in applying for mom for a long-term care policy because it's gonna probably be pretty easy for dad to spend the majority of their assets down, and thus it won't be much left for her unless you kids are in a situation that you wanted to pay for it. And she's like, well, there's 5 of us, 3 of us. So, I planted a couple seeds there, but I also told her, don't be freaking out and say we got to get coverage for mom because the reality is mom probably doesn't have enough to pay the premium and that the assets are going to be gone. So I said, we have a safety net called Medicaid that's going to be there probably relatively short period of time for dad.
Yeah. And I think, you can always be helpful to someone, even if you can't offer them a product. And I think that's probably, the incentive to constantly be a lifetime learner in this industry, because for you, conversations don't end with just, I don't think we're going to be able to get a product. So there's no sense in us keeping on talking, right? You can provide immense value beyond that point in the conversation that at the end of the day will make you referable, right? And who knows who, right? At the end of the day, you could be talking with somebody who you don't really have a solution for, but you provide a lot of value for them to be able to take the next steps in their family's well-being and the rest of their family's life as far as they're concerned. And they may know a few people who are good candidates for your help. And I think being able to provide value even beyond just how does this product work? How could I best use my money to buy a long-term care policy? I think that matters a lot. And it matters even in like the outreach conversation we had. The more you know and the more you're exposing yourself to, the more opportunities you have to think about somebody and reach out, right? At the end of the day. So I think that's super helpful. Does anybody else have anything they would like to ask of Miss Rhonda before I cut her loose here? Because
I,
I
I have
know.
a quick question. Rhonda, what's your take on your clients using the equity in their homes, this reverse mortgage? I've done my research. I see good, I see bad, and I'm just not 100% confident yet to make that recommendation. But I'd love to know your take on it with your experience.
I'm going to be honest. I have not dealt in that. I get it. I'm not dealt in that space. I know we've got people in our toolbox that we can use on those reverse mortgages. Like you, Regina, I hear a lot of people say it's a great thing. I know the products have evolved and changed. So I get it that for some people, the majority of their equity is their home. I see it being a good tool. So if they want to stay at home, use that up and they're not so worried about leaving a home or passing it on to their kids. By far, it's a much better tool so they don't have to have the kids coming over every day and using the monies for home care. So I get the value of it. I just have yet to actually write one of those policies or make that referral. So outside of a basic understanding of them, I don't have specifics. So I don't know. We could open that up, Jason, to see if anybody else has used that.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of folks who said they know people who work in that industry. I know Um, our beloved team leader Phyllis has had some experience in her own reverse for her financial situation. But if I could share my screen really quick, we are connected with the good folks over at Fairway Reverse Mortgage as well. I recommend wholeheartedly to work with an expert on any matters related to reverse mortgages and long-term care planning. There is certainly a lot of gray area there. Any industry is going to have bad actors, but if you're working with an organization that you trust and going over that proposed plan with who you're working with first before you just kind of cut them loose, so that there's best interests at heart, things of that nature, and you learn a bit in the process. The folks over at Fairway can help with that. So you can, in the buddy system and our community partners page, you can connect with Fairway, learn a little bit more about them, get some resources on Reverse Mortgage 101, lots of other promotional pieces that they have, educational pieces to get your knowledge up, because it does come up every once in a while in long-term care planning where for folks who um, either don't have another resort or are in a, prime position for a reverse mortgage financially, it could be a huge help. So just wanted to share that for anybody who is, you know, working through a case like that where it could be help. Thanks for the question. That was a good one. Anybody else have anything else for Rhonda? All right, Miss Rhonda, as always, I want to thank you for sharing your knowledge and allowing us to ask you just a wall of questions here. Really appreciate it. Hope everybody was able to take something away from the conversation today. I know I was. And why don't you get that kitty to the vet? Thanks, Rhonda. Appreciate it. So that will do it. Mark, do you have anything to share with the folks before I kind of cut them loose here?
Just want to say that thanks for all you guys' support on the buddy system, sales tools. We are going to be releasing about 3 new tools into the agent portal very soon. I would say within the next 2 weeks or so. Just to give you a quick rundown, if you haven't heard, individual product buddy, product recommendation tool. We have the individual quick quote. So if you want to kind of get like a real quick understanding or idea of what pay-as-you-go premium would be for traditional or hybrid products. And then we also have our new Buddy AI Advisor tool, which will be a fun thing to try out. Ask it underwriting question, and it will draw from a lot of our database of information and give you responses. So all of them are brand new, so definitely want to get your feedback. But again, thanks for kind of pushing us in that direction, and I think you're going to see a lot of new fun stuff there to play with soon.
That's a quick question.
Mhm.
In Benefit Buddy, when you're doing the self-funding, is 5% the maximum assumption for the return?
No, you can jack it up to whatever you like.
Oh, really?
It
Because
it,
I
it
tried.
did you?
And it
Um,
was kicking me back. I was trying to do 13% just for the heck of it, and it was kept getting me back to 5.
so
Maybe I
maybe
thought
you've
that's
hit maybe
impossible.
you've hit some sort of ceiling that I'm not aware of, but I remember showing some pretty crazy projections myself.
Okay. I'll play
And
around again. I might have done something wrong. I just was
said you
wondering.
tried 13. Let's see. Yeah, I'm able to show 13
Hmm.
on this. I can share you this what it at least looks like from the
No,
numbers, and we
thanks.
can take a look under the hood
No,
together.
thanks. Thank you.
If you need it, you can just grab my calendar anytime. We
Okay,
can go
thank
through that.
you.
Yeah, that goes for
Thank
any of our
you.
tools. If there's something that you're looking to get a little bit better with using or understand how we
Hmm.
use it conversationally, I do those demos with folks quite a bit, and I'm happy to do them. So anytime, just let me know, and that goes for the new tools that we're going to be releasing here very soon.
Excellent. Thank
Um,
you.
Good question, Regina. Are we going to have this available to advocates or specialist memberships only? Um, I think it may vary depending on the tools. but right now I think uh, I will say right now a couple will be available to advocate and one or two maybe specialists. We're not entirely sure yet, but when we do the full release, we will let you know. 30-day free trial regardless. For anybody who's not signed up, once we make that announcement, that's a super good time to start a free trial and see if kind of the suite of products there on the individual and group side work for you. Also, if you are somebody who's very proficient in a certain long-term care product, I'd love to hear from you because I would like to have you as a study group presenter if you'd like. So normally we had the big block of carrier calls just recently, and I always like to complement that with agent calls because I know there are certain things that carriers can't necessarily bring up in their presentation. Where might we write other products instead of this product? What are some things to watch out for this product? Having boots on the ground sort of sales experience with the product as somebody who represents multiple products, I think is something very valuable. So if you or somebody you know is very proficient in a certain product, reach out to me and we can get you booked for an agent session. That's all I got. Mark, you got anything left?
Last thing is we are working with Allstate on a guaranteed issue offer for our agent and agency partners and their employees. So if you have interest in getting a plan for yourself, for your employees, let us know. The nice thing with that particular product is in California, it now has 5% compound inflation. So quite a bargain, I would say, on the product side. And just trying to expand access so more people have it.
Yeah. Let us know if there's interest there as we get kind of closer to rounding out that offer. I'm sure we'll have some sort of presentation on the worksite study group or something of that nature around it, but definitely a really, really cool opportunity. There was something else I was going to
Question,
say,
would that
Mark, but I
apply to
blanked.
spouses of agents or only employees of agents?
It would be for employees and for spouses, yes.
Can you say guaranteed issue?
For employees, yes. For spouses, there's like a smaller level of guaranteed issue. And then there's like a simplified buy-up on some of the options. But I'll have to get back to you. I don't know exactly how much we're going to get yet. So we're waiting to
Okay. Yeah, I'd love
probably
to know
this
about
week we'll
that.
know. Yeah.
Thanks.
For other groups, it's been like a limited amount of GI depending on working or non-working spouse. But there is generally in those offers GI available for both. So yeah, good opportunities there as well. Well, Mark, I forgot the last thing I was going to say. So, as my mother always said, it must have been a lie. Anyway, thank you very much for being here with us. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you this time next week. Have a good one, folks. Be
Thanks,
well.
guys.
Hi.
Bye.